Hey guys, how's it going? Companion here. Today I want to talk about what the best legendaries in Arena are. And, I talked about this in the past, but, I talked about it mostly when GVG was the dominant expansion in the Arena meta, and that has changed a lot. With TGT and now with League of Explorers bringing the average power level to, a fairly high bar in Arena, the synergistic aspect of the deck is actually starting to be a bigger impact than before. And this has a lot to do with legendaries. While, of course, you don't really get to pick the legendary you want, you don't really get to pick a legendary at all in some Arena runs, but picking the one that works with your deck more so than ever before is more important than picking it over one that's just generally better. And this has to do with, a lot of identifying your deck, but this is something, I've seen Arena players overall become a little bit better at. So I think we're at the stage now where we can talk about this and, maybe we can see how things work. So in my opinion, there are just, some legendaries that are just absolutely great in every single deck that you play. Dr. Boom is obviously king of the legendary list, and that really is probably never going to go away because he's so ridiculous when your opponent doesn't have a big game hunter. He's actually pretty ridiculous even when he does have a big game hunter. That is just how good he is. Number 2 on my list is Deathwing. Deathwing is one of those cards that, because the average power level in Arena has risen so much, that games are a lot more marginal than before. Often, RNG can dictate a game fairly early on in the turns, but often it's just a battle for tempo, and it's really hard to actually do anything. So Deathwing just comes in there and, levels the playing field. If you're behind, he's great, and it's something that people can no longer actually play around. You more often than before have to go all in. You have to, if he has a flame strike, I'm just going to lose. And they don't even consider Deathwing. So the amount of play that goes into playing against this guy just happens so frequently. But it's not only that. The biggest punishes for Deathwing were generally, Priest and Shaman with Shadow Word Death and Hex. And Priest and Shaman are, at around the warrior level right now in Arena, in my opinion, so you don't really see too many of them, and usually when you do, it's not really because they have high removal, so that works out pretty well. And number 3 on my good in every type of deck list, we have Onyxia. Onyxia is great in control because you're playing few creatures, so when you play Onyxia, you get full value. It's great in an aggressive deck because you can just trade your entire board to try to clear out your opponents, which you usually can do if you're playing an aggressive deck, and then you can play Onyxia in the same fashion, and it just gives you a really big opportunity to push even if you're playing an aggressive deck. Now, those are just standard. There's not actually too many legendaries that are good in both type of decks, and I really wanted to emphasize how good some legendaries are in some decks and how bad they can be on the other side. So for instance, in aggressive or tempo-driven decks, which is generally what you're playing in Arena, a card like Kill to Zad is really strong because in this type of deck, you want to be ahead, you want to be winning, and you're going to be playing a deck like that if you have the cards, if you have really powerful like 2 drops, really powerful like 3 drops, a decent number of 1 drops, you're going to be playing these guys, and when you drop Kill to Zad on turn 8, you're going to do so in a manner where you actually have stuff on the board you can trade. So it doesn't work very well if you're playing a control deck where you're relying on like a board clear on turn 6 or 7 to bring you back in the game, because then when you actually want to play Kill to Zad, well, it's not going to do anything. You're very rarely winning the board, and even when you are, you're usually winning with mid-game and late-game minions, which you often can't sacrifice off. So that is really important to note. And there's Ragnar Rose. Now, Ragnar Rose was thought to be one of the best legendaries in Arena ever, but he's fit a role again where, because some players are playing a lot of small minions, a lot of aggressive minions, even mid-range minions, Ragnar Rose kind of struggles because so many of them have Death Rattle and Divine Shields in Arena, that it's actually very poor in a control deck, because when you can't really fixate his targets, you can't really narrow them down very well, it's just kind of a crappy card. But when you're playing an aggressive deck, when you can kill all but his biggest creature, and often you can set up the situation where he'll kill your opponent or kill his biggest creature, or just, you dominate the board. So when you play Ragnar, your opponent has to deal with a huge threat and all your little ones. It's just an amazing position to be in. And number 3 on the good in tempo / aggressive decks is Foe Reaper 4000. This guy doesn't shine it too much, but these days with so many people playing small minions, even in the control decks, you have to play them to keep up. It shuts out so many plays. It basically forces your opponent to play only big minions. It usually means that they can't deal with your small minions, so you play Foe Reaper, they have to play big minions, and you can either remove those or go face. Big minions are a counter to small minions if they're actually threatening enough, but usually when you play a Foe Reaper, it's a little bit too late even for that situation. So Foe Reaper is one of the absolute best closers if you're playing tempo or aggro and you're even just slightly ahead. On the other side, we have the good in control decks, and this is a little bit different. These are cards that kind of help you bring back the board. They do something even though they're kind of alone, and number 1 on my list is Sylvanas. Sylvanas has been traditionally a good card, but in an aggressive deck, it's often not that great. Certainly not as good as it is in a control deck. If you're slightly behind, you play Sylvanas, and often when you're holding a board clear behind, your opponent just doesn't know what to do. It just sets up in a situation where he kills Sylvanas, he's screwed, so often he'll try to overcommit to the board, push for lethal, then you board clear him, and then he's really screwed. So Sylvanas helps you do that. It's just it holds its own ground as well, so it's not really a liability when you don't have the board clear to back it up, but absolutely game winning when you do. And there's Baron Geddon. This guy, once upon a time received basically no credit for being a good legendary, but these days, again, with so many people playing small minions, in a control deck, it acts kind of like a board clear, but also, it's just a big body on the board that threatens to kill more small minions. So its 5 health is fairly well represented in just dominating the board, and I think if it had any more better stats, Baron Geddon would just be absolute at the top of Arena and constructed. And number 3 on my good in control decks is Reno Jackson. I have noticed that usually when you are playing a good aggressive or tempo deck, you're doing so because you have often high number in multiples of just very powerful early game cards. Like Zombie Child, you have like 2 of those, and you have like 3 shielded mini bots, and then you're playing like aggro / tempo, right? That's kind of the requirement. So it doesn't work so well on that deck, and also doesn't work so well on that deck because you're just generally all in. You're going to lose not because you run out of health most of the time, but because you run out of good tempo plays. You run out of tempo and your opponent just clears you out and has just bigger swing plays and on 8, 9, 10 mana. But Reno Jackson in a control deck lets you flame strike, and instead of your opponent pushing for lethal, dominating you, you have the Reno Jackson heal, which is absolutely insane. You guys know in Constructed how insane it is. Well, in Arena, there's generally no combos. There's generally no super crazy bursts. So it's even crazier in Arena. And I feel out of the whole list, Reno Jackson and maybe Foe Reaper probably have received the fewest amount of credit. So, basically what I'm trying to get at here is don't just pick the legendary that you think is the best one. Look at your deck, because having the right legendary in your deck now more than ever is so important that it synergizes with the rest of your deck, because you can make a decision that will, one single card in your deck can propel your deck to be so much stronger than it would otherwise be. Identifying what type of deck you're playing and picking a legendary in line with that is definitely going to give you that little bit of an edge that some other people have not yet realized. But of course, on the flip side of that, sometimes you don't get quite the legendaries you want, and there is a little bit of flexibility. There are legendaries that don't seem good, but with change, with new expansions rolling out, sometimes the ones that were bad in the past can be deceptively good. So it's also important to experiment, and even though a card might seem really bad, I urge you guys to try it, so at least you could have a very fun and maybe educational experience. And on that note, I wanted to show you guys some moments where I have been educated by encountering legendaries in Arena, and it's really one of the best moments in Hearthstone where things change in such a big way. Legendaries in Hearthstone are so impactful, and getting the synergy, getting that right situation is just so awesome. So check out the clips. Hope you guys learned something, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. that didn't work. Okay, I'll take some late game. Okay, fine. Fine, I guess that's somewhat interesting. I mean, you just keep saying that as the story kept going. But they would make like such ridiculous decisions based on this story. I just can't actually remember any examples because I did play on very low sleep. I might lose to an execute. 6-0 warrior probably has an execute, but none of the other plays really work so well. So. Oh my god, that happened. Okay. Alright. Just not good at this game right now, man. Just not good at the game. And a 4-drop. Get in there, fight, maggot. It's really fucking hot in here. I'm just gonna open the door 1 second.
Drink with me, friend. You're in trouble now.
I've been in trouble, bro.
You smell like a leopard.
I think I was gonna do pretty fine until the Hemet came along. Yeah. Top deck Deathbite. Do I provide coaching? Well, obviously not. I'm not very good at this game, apparently. Okay, well, we'll Shadow Bolt what it pings, right?
It's getting hot in here.
Okay. Taunt and stealth taunt. It's a pretty poor play.
It's getting hot in here.
Okay. Maybe we can actually come back.
Get back, you savage.
One of his cards is a spare part, so that doesn't work too well. What? Well, if I tap and don't draw anything, I lose. What would work here? Demon Wrath and Horse Rider, that's it. Can I expect to win if I don't tap? Yeah, I can expect to win if I don't tap, but I'm playing this regardless. No, he'll attack that with that. I won't win that way. I have to go for it. I lose.
Well played. You win this time.
Whatever, we'll just keep the powerful cards. Oh, well that worked out.
Don't worry, loves. The cavalry's here.
No, that sucks.
Bathe in flame.
If he has kings, let's lose the game.
You love my new recipe.
Oh, that's pretty bad. It's a really good mana wraith. Ate my coin and 1 health off the Drake, making it killable
Your
off the
magic
board.
shall not save.
And he has a silence. Wow. This is actually gross. This guy's so fucking lucky. Ridiculous answers so far. Ridiculous answer on 3, 4, and 5. Alright.
Where shall I strike?
I think it was a huge mistake for him to trade there. That gives me a chance in this game. Unless he has another ridiculous answer. Looks like he might not. Man, I really want to play that, but I have to kill that.
For the wilds.
Ah, the great outdoors.
I wait for no one. Job done. Reporting for duty. You call that a weapon? But I've got the beast in my sight. For the wild.
Well, that worked out. I have Drew the Claw and Razorfin Hunter. The boar from Razorfin is a beast.
Justice.
This guy's pretty desperate.
We must cleanse the Sunwell.
Trap.
For no one. For the wild.
That's pretty good.
Your mother was a
This is like one of the most insane matches I've ever played. Are you kidding?
reporting for duty.
That's so insane that he drew that right after.
Don't mess with snakes. It has to be snakes.
For the wild.
Don't top deck 1 damage. I can't stay alive on this board very long.
I got the best deals anywhere.
Reporting for duty.
I'm gonna be 1 damage off lethal, so. But we have quite a few taunts as well. If we don't get the 1 damage. Oh, we didn't get it. We can clear everything except the 4-4, but the 4-4 kills me. What were draws that we'd win the game? Savage Roar, Swipe, Drew the Claw, probably Sunwalker, probably Ancient of War, probably Ironbark. It's almost 50%. Outskilled. I did play so well. I played so fucking well. But, yeah. Deathwing against Druid.
I concede.